It's time, ladies and gentlemen, for Sorcerer, Vessel of Hated, Season 6 Edition. Literally, yes, I have and still am literally playing Vessel of Hatred / Season 6 for you guys, so I can work out going in the best of everything Sorcerer, which is just awesome. So thank you to Diablo on that front. Now, of course, I won't get to keep my character that I'm showing you here. I'll have to start fresh with all of you on the 8th, but know that this leveling guide, more than usual, comes with some serious testing, because I have literally leveled through Vessel Season 6 with the build I'm about to present, and it has been crushing. It has been smooth, mana efficient, powerful, and best of all, as soon as you hit level 60, it's strong enough to immediately do your pit 20 without any gear optimization, and get you into World Tier 5 Torment 1, which is where you want to be as soon as possible. And talking of as soon as possible, you want to be leveling in Penitent as soon as possible, and this build can do that by like level 25. I was on hard to begin with and then swapped to Penitent, skipping Expert, because Incinerate with the new Vessel tools we have to play with is just that good for this. And the thing is, you guys will have an even easier time than me, because I am on a fresh save in order to play this for you guys. I don't have all of the renown unlocks, which means I'm actually missing all of these skill points that you guys will have as soon as you start. So you will be even more powerful straight away than I was, and I still had a really easy time with what I'm about to show you. So my fellow sorcerers, really look forward to the builds coming up this season, because, well, I have been hard at work, tinkering, testing, and literally playing them for you guys as much as I can. I want to bring you the best stuff I can physically make, and I will always put everything into that, and it means a lot that you guys like it so much. So seriously, thank you, because without your support I wouldn't be able to do this and actually give my feedback on Sorcerer to Blizzard, which I have done in order to make the class as best as it can be for all of us and fix some of the problems it has had and still does. Yes, so we are looking at one fantastically fun season. Vessels really put a lot of awesome things into this game, but this is not about that. We have many guides, first looks, breakdowns of all the new systems, mechanics, your mercenaries, and so on and so forth that are either already up so you can go see them or coming very soon. But today, Sorcerer leveling through Nahantu 1 to 60 after the squish. Let's get into this. As you're already seeing then, it is Incinerate. It's still just too incinerate to ignore. I've had to play around and test with all your other classics like your Firewall, your Chain Lightning and such forth, and nothing competes with just the ease of use of Incinerate and how comfortably potent it is out the box. But then when you do find the aspects that really make it pop off, you, well, really pop off, including a new one that I've actually found is really quite nice, especially early on during, well, leveling. So, as you have been seeing and are seeing, yeah, this more than gets the job done and doesn't come with any difficulties you have to surmount like other leveling builds do. The big one, of course, being mana. At the very beginning, you will indeed have a few moments where you're waiting to incinerate, and you might throw out a few firebolts before you remove it from your bar, but by and large, this will solve its own mana problems as you level up and progress without you having to go out your way to do so. That's really exciting. We're also working in the new familiars, which are again really good while leveling for a multitude of reasons that we'll get into, and all in all, I have had a fantastic time smoothly, quickly going 1 to 60 through the new Vessel campaign with Incinerate and and you will too. And yes, of course, I will recommend which mercenaries to use and which of their skills to use to best complement, well, essentially every build going forward, so don't worry about that too. For the first time in Vessel then, with feeling, welcome to the skill tree. And we'll go point for point, as this is, of course, a leveling guide. We begin then with 1 point in Firebolt, and then 1 point in Enhanced, and essentially, you might use this a little bit very early on, and just kind of throw it out if you ever need to, if you're ever waiting on a bit of mana for Incinerate before things get online. Like, I'm talking up to, like, level 10, so don't worry too much about it. In any case, then we do grab our Incinerate, and then Enhanced, and then finally Destructive. The damage reduction while leveling is also nice, especially when you push into World Tier 4 earlier on, and it can just keep you going. Then we whack a second point in to get to our defensives, where we now immediately grab Teleport, immediately grab Ice Armor, and then immediately grab Enhanced Ice Armor just to get that mana regen coming in while we have it. The extra movement speed is also really good for, you know, just leveling speed. Then with our last point, we will grab Mystical, as it does do a nice little bit of freezing, and that extra damage to said frozen will come in handy straight away. Now we are actually starting to level up. We've spent our instant points, so let's get into that. We want to now grab yourself Familiar, then Enhanced Familiar, and then Invoked Familiar. We will be just keeping out a Fire Familiar as often as possible for this lovely 10% multiplicative increase on our Incinerate and such forth. Also, the actual raw Familiar damage I've found to be quite nice as you're progressing through. Then you want to grab yourself the Lightning Spear, and then the Enhanced Lightning Spear, finally the Invoked Lightning Spear, as this will give you some really nice crowd control and indeed vulnerable uptime as you start making your way through the campaign. Then we want to head all the way back up and actually finish off your Incinerate so we can get as much damage out of it as possible, and then you're going to grab Fireball, and indeed that's going to become the first of your enchantments that you'll now go unlock and get. The extra pop of damage every time you kill thing is absolutely unrivaled while leveling and blowing through all of the mobs. Now we can get ourselves our maximum conjuration mastery. We'll be throwing out the double lightning spears, throwing out the familiars. The extra mana regen really does help, and the damage and movement speed ain't too bad either. Obviously the uptime's not great, but it's still a really potent passive, and we make enough use of it to be worth getting. So initially then, now that we've got to our ultimates, you are going to want to grab Inferno, Prime Inferno, and then Supreme Inferno. You essentially will be keeping Inferno for as long as you need it for mana. Your general flow will be to Incinerate until you completely go then drop your Inferno, get the free Incinerate for your 8 seconds, and then by that point you'll have a full mana tank, and then you repeat. So that's the flow there. We want to grab Evocation after that as soon as possible, as the free cooldown reduction is lovely, especially when we essentially just can't get any on our leveling gear, as we'll be changing gear too often for it. Then we want our fiery passives. Although we have got Inferno, so we can go straight to Endless Pyre, we actually want Endless Pyre a bit later down the line, so initially we're going to grab Fiery Surge, as the mana is genuinely helpful, but more importantly, we want to get Soulfire going as soon as we can. You want to put 2 points into it for now, and then we've got our key passive. While at endgame, in endgame gear, Enlightenment is essentially best for every build that we have, because it's just that good. There's a few exceptions here and there, but generally this thing is just phenomenal. While leveling, you're going to get a lot more out of just the straight up 60% multiplicative increase of combustion on your Incinerate all the time. You can't get enough Enlightenment uptime, and you also don't have enough, or indeed any, Fire, Lightning, Cold bonus damage to add together an increase anyway, so stick with combustion. Then we want to go back here, get yourself Soulfire, and then max out Warmth, and as soon as you've maxed out Warmth, welcome to You Can Never Die now, because you just heal so much from everything that's being incinerated all around you. Around now, you will be getting your second enchantment slot, and we actually want to be giving it to Incinerate, because it got buffed so it has 100% uptime, we essentially just have 100% uptime of a second Incinerate, which is like a kind of double damage, and it works exceptionally. It also permanently keeps active an aspect that we will be picking up, as the aspect does register the extra Incinerate as counting for it. So this is our really lovely setup. Now you might be thinking, why no Firewall in 2 Enhanced for that huge increase in burning? Yes, that is good, but the thing is, we don't want to be hard casting the Firewall, we don't want to spend the mana, we don't want to spend the time when we can just be beaming Incinerate, and as the enchantment, we just don't have the lucky hit to really have it happen with any frequency to at all compete with just the pure damage increase of permanent second Incinerate beam. So for now, while we're leveling, while we're progressing, we leave it alone. So we can now go back up to the top and start filling out a few key passives that we didn't have before. The first of which is to get our defensives a little bit increased with Mana Shield, then align the elements, and then protection, so we can start getting barrier uptime. Then we want the free damage from maxing out our glass cannon, and the damage reduction from shimmering teleport. Then we can come over here and finish the damage increase on our fireball before heading back down south and getting a increase in the duration that our barriers are up. Because we don't have a lot of cooldown reduction, even with evocation early, getting that barrier uptime is really good, especially if you find a nice conceited aspect you can keep using while leveling, but just for general survivability. Then we want to max out your inner flames to get that extra 12% multiplicative damage increase, and now we're kind of reaching the point where you can sort of put points wherever you want. Obviously, the next easy damage increase is your Endless Pyre, get that going, and at this stage you will probably be at the point where you don't need the mana increase from Fiery Surge, so we can drop the point in that once you've got Endless Pyre, thanks to the connection with Inferno. However, we will be also dropping Inferno soon, so this is a very temporary shuffle. Then we want to head back up the tree in order to grab 1 point in Elemental Attunement, as the resets are quite useful to have, and then finally 3 points in Elemental Dominance for another 12% multiplicative damage increase, as at this stage you will have a lot of mana going for you, and this will be active most of the time. Now, you will also be reaching the point, as you get this, that you no longer need Inferno for Supreme Inferno and the mana efficiency. When you reach that point, you want to get rid of Inferno, so you'll have to put 1 point back in Fiery Surge, and then you want to instead spend those points thusly into Ice Blades. You will, or at least in my case, need to take another point out of Elemental Dominance, but then we go Enhanced, and then we go Summoned, and then we can just keep throwing out Ice Blades for an extra stack of Conjuration Mastery and a bit more cooldown reduction. It doesn't change our enchantment slots, so you don't have to worry about that. Then you will have an extra couple points to spend that I don't have here, because again, I am missing the final set of 6 renown points. So you will have 6 more points. You want to spend those points thusly. Final point in Elemental Dominance, then you want to get Enhanced Fireball and Greater Fireball, that's 3 of your points gone, and then with your remaining 3 points, you want to go into Potent Warding, as getting that Elemental Resist will actually start to really help once you've pushed your Incinerate into Torment World Tiers and start using it to farm your first endgame build. So, hopefully that all makes sense. This is the final state your build will be looking like, plus the 6 points I just told you about. So this then is how you will be set up, depending on the stage you are through your journey. As I said, eventually you will lose Inferno in favor of Ice Blades, but Inferno will be taking its space until you are fully mana efficient. As you can see, I've reached the point where I can channel Incinerate for ages, like longer than I need on most groups of enemies, and then my mana's going to power back up and it's absolutely fine. And that's without having my conjurations on the table, which when I do, I just can't run out of mana for a couple of minutes. In any case, if you are not like that, then you do want to have, as I said, the Ice Blades gone and your Inferno back in. And when you do have your Inferno back in, as I also said, you just power through all of your mana. When you run out, you drop your Inferno, and basic stuff, you use your infinite mana, your real mana restores, and then you can use that again. So you've just kind of got to make that judgment call as you're leveling when it's time to finally drop the mana help that Inferno gives you in favor of the cooldown reduction, extra damage, and stacks of conjuration mastery that the Ice Blades gives you. So as you can see then, this enchantment, the Incinerate enchantment, because it is just permanently up now, we have just this lovely permanent double beam of Incinerate pouring out, which is a huge damage increase and something that really helps this build even more, especially while leveling, as you have to put no resources into it whatsoever. That is really nice. But you'll notice that my Incinerate has the extra little green bar above it, and it also has this lovely blue super fire effect. That is the overheating aspect that makes your Incinerate just pulse critical damage while you're firing it. This is amazing for leveling. The scaling isn't as good in endgame, at least going by PTR and more endgame testing standards, but early on, i.e. leveling, yeah, the actual pops of damage this thing pours out is really good. You will see in the various footage you saw of me, enemies chunking down each time it pops. And because you just have to use Incinerate to keep it active forever, as I said, the Incinerate enchant counts, so it keeps it permanently active even between groups of enemies, which is a really nice thing. Now, there's a chance this might get changed or fixed, and if it does, I'll update this little bit here, but if I don't interrupt myself, then you know it is all good. Other than that, you just play it as you might imagine. Use your lightning spears on cooldown, use your, if you have them, ice blades on cooldown, or your inferno when you need mana, teleport to just go faster and get things done quicker, ice armor whenever you're taking a little bit too much damage, and then for your familiar, you want to make sure you use Incinerate before it, so it's a fire familiar, and then just put one out. You can stack them up and put them all out for extra damage if you're on a boss, but more than anything, you just kind of want to always have one going, so you're making your Incinerate that 10% stronger. Just sort of cycle them. Obviously, stopping to channel Incinerate in order to cast all of your conjurations is quite annoying, but it is what it is, but you don't have to constantly spam your familiars, just gently keep a fire one ticking over, as that gives you the most bang for your buck. Other than that, yeah, you just get on top of something's face and spam Incinerate. Because you will ideally have your flamethrower aspect on your staff, you do want to be next to something so you can give it the full triple beam and get that lovely maximum DPS out. Other than that, I mean, you know how Incinerate be, it's Incinerate, it's not exactly earth-shattering, nor new, put the beam on the enemies. So, let's actually get into the gear, and this is essentially, apart from the helmet, the gear that I hit level 60 in. I didn't do anything crazy, it just works that well. And I will begin by saying that your legs, your chest, and indeed your helmet just kind of don't matter. I have a random Ice Heart Brias I found on just for the maximum life, that's how much it doesn't matter, the rest of it isn't doing anything for me, and again with your chest, with your helmet. You can put on any given defensive or utility aspect you want, but you'll be changing gear a lot, especially to keep your maximum life up as you find more and more maximum life gear, so you don't end up too squishy, so it's just kind of not worth it. It's a lot of material investment to keep enchanting non-essential pieces of gear, so you'll just sort of letting it be what it be, and that is what I recommend. The rest of it, however, there is some strong contenders that you want to try and aim to keep having as you level. First and foremost, your jewelry. Essentially, you can get your first 2 rings and necklace, give them an aspect, and then not change them until you get to like level 60, you just want the effect. On your necklace specifically then, you want Conflagration. You can get this from Light's Keep, it's the only one that we can just get into our codex instantly without having it drop first. I haven't had a better one drop in my entire leveling so far, so it's still at the minimum codex level, but it's still very much worth it. That extra burning damage and those pops of damage are too good to pass up, so you want Conflagration on your neck. On one of your rings, you want Engulfing Flames. That increasing damage as you channel up to 30% multiplicative, and the extra pop ones, they are no longer healthy, which is most of the health bar, is just a really huge increase and too much to pass up on. Then we want that new overheating, so we do keep popping out this critical damage as we channel. It's really noticeable as you are leveling up. And then lastly, on your gloves, I have found that Firestarter works really well. Obviously, in the endgame, once you're min-maxing, you're pushing hard content, this thing is garbage. But while leveling, the actual raw pop of damage this does when you first incinerate is like over half the health of most enemies. So you just instantly half kill everything if you get a good roll on it, and it was working exceptionally well. Or even over something like Conceited or Stormswell, because you just don't have the barrier uptime while you're leveling with the cooldown reduction we don't have. So this was just a really large amount of good instant damage that worked well. But it is luxury, it's optional, you don't need to make sure you always have this. These are the core 3 and you can just leave them on your jewelry. On your staff, and I do say staff because you just always want to go out your way to have the highest item power staff you can find, have the flamethrower aspect. This is the biggest bump of this build. It's really good, but once you get flamethrower, it's ridiculous. So hopefully RNG is with you and you have one drop sooner rather than later. I got to level 40 before my first flamethrower dropped, so that was fun, but hey, that just shows you how good even Incinerate is without it, because I got to level 40 very damn quickly. In any case, always have flamethrower, always have it on a two-handed weapon, because that's where it shines, and you will have to keep enchanting this as you upgrade your item power staff. It is a little bit of annoyance, but it is most certainly worth it. Then on your boots, you either want Wild Bolt, you want the Daze aspect, you want the Turn into Bats Vampire aspect, or you want yourself the reduced cooldown on Teleport aspect. All of them just kind of help speed you up while leveling, but none of them are absolutely key. So in terms of a priority order, you essentially have Flamethrower at the top, followed by Conflagration, followed by Overheating, followed by Engulfing Flames, followed by Firestarter. They are your 5 aspects. The importance is in that order. Number 1 and 2 you always want to have, and then the rest just get as and when you can at the most potent level you can get them. Hopefully that all kind of makes sense. Gems wise, if you want to while leveling, put intelligence in your armor or resist in your jewelry, and then you will be having a couple runes given to you as you level up. But the thing is, you don't get a lot, and they're not that good, and if you don't go out your way to farm more, you're not going to have great options, and you don't want to go out your way to farm more because you care about getting to level 60 and completing the campaign as fast as possible. So essentially any 2-slot armor you do get, feel free to just whack any given rune pairing you feel like into it. They're not going to make a huge difference while you're actually leveling. You can also just put more damage over time into your weapon too, and that's completely fine. Just to touch on tempering, I wouldn't recommend doing it while leveling. You don't really need to. You want to just save your resources and actually think about it once you start getting into your Torment tiers and working on a proper, more endgame build, which I will be bringing you as soon as possible once the season actually starts. The first comfy build to transition from this Incinerate build into, but it is there if you want to, and generally just get things that make you do more damage. Generically, nothing is super important. Something like Incinerate dealing double damage is really nice, obviously, but just in general, vulnerable damage, just damage is going to do you fine if you really need to. Obviously, a lot of it revolves around manual RNG and what actually drops for you and when as well. Then, for your mercenaries, I heartily recommend that you take Rahir as your primary mercenary, and with him you go down his right tree like this. You want yourself Ground Slam into the Aegis for that 15% all res, which just gets more and more useful as you progress until eventually you res cap yourself, but early on this is a godsend, and then Bastion for that 90% damage reduction on you, which is is hilarious, but not as hilarious as Inspiration, which means that enemies stood in this ground slam take 15% multiplicative more damage, and you do 25% more multiplicative damage while in Bastion. So these two constantly popping off increase your damage output massively, and since you're just stood there channeling Incinerate anyway, standing in the Bastion works really well. Also, he's just really good at keeping you alive, and if you're going to push into World Tier 4 early while leveling, which you can, that's a really good thing. Not to mention then pushing into World Tier 5 and beyond with this build to get things going into the endgame. He's just really steady. We don't need Altkin because we are already doing a burning build, so his burning help isn't needed like it will be on other builds. So yeah, Rahir really is the MVP while you're leveling, and honestly he will be for a lot of builds beyond too. For your secondary reinforcement slot, you can kind of choose whatever you want. None of them are crazily critical or useful, but I would recommend that you put Altkin in your reinforcement slot just so you can be leveling him up while you level, as he will be one of our best mercenaries for most other builds going into the season, and then eventually choosing either Chain of Souls for the damage and the stun, or your Field of Languish for the extra damage reduction is the way to go. So, to touch on really early Paragon, you'll of course get to level 60, you'll have your initial surge of Paragon from your renown points. This is what you want to do with it. Immediately go up and left and get Resilience, then immediately go up and right, get Elementalist, continue on through to this dex, go over to the glyph, and then put in the best glyph that you have. Depending on your glyph RNG and what's dropped for you so far, that could be different, but you cannot go wrong with just the Eliminator. Get it activated with the Intelligence and enjoy that extra 10% multiplicative damage to elites. Grab yourself Studied and then grab yourself Elemental Balance, and we are ready to go up through more non-physical into the gate and get into our next board, which is going to be our brand new board, the Fundamental Release as the new Heart of Sorcerer. And that then, ladies and gentlemen, is that. I hope it all kind of made sense, and I hope you get good use out of it as I have. I really want this to be as comprehensive and as good for you guys as possible, to make it as fun and as smooth and as easy to experience the Vessel of Hatred campaign and get into endgame, and really, leveling has never been smoother, or quicker, or just generally nicer to experience than it is now. The campaign is really a lot more fun than just sitting in Helltide for eternity and so on and such forth, and you will find yourself flying to level 6, helped massively by the potency of this version of leveling Incinerate. So for now then, let me know what you're hoping to see from Sorcerer in Season 6. I'll be back soon with more Sorcerer goodness, and yeah, like you've enjoyed this, subscribe, hit the bell for more, consider supporting the future of the channel on Patreon down below, and until we meet again, a goodbye.
Josh, Cotton, and Hollow with the videos, dropping the humor like a hammer on your tippy toes, bringing entertainment on a daily arrangement to take our insanity and turn it into entertainment. Yes, I said entertainment twice, to reiterate that it is nice to look into your faces on a mostly daily basis when you let us in your homes to make the whole world a stage. Goodbye.